For thousands of years, there was this place, a chain of islands scattered across the equator, that was basically a myth to the rest of the world. A paradise so fragrant, some believed it was the origin of the divine. You might know them as the fabled Spice Islands. But here's the real question. How did thousands of separate islands forge one single culinary identity that's so incredibly powerful and diverse? Well, that's the story we're going to dig into today. It's a story of history, trade, and revolution, all simmered together into the food we know and love. Let's get into it. All right, so our story doesn't start with kings or giant empires. Nope. It starts with the land and the sea itself. We're going back to the very first people who figured out how to live off this rich volcanic soil and these incredibly bountiful oceans. To make sense of this whole epic journey, you can really break it down into three main parts. First up, you've got the original phase. This is all about what the land and sea provided, right? Then things get really interesting in the multicultural phase. That's when the rest of the world basically shows up on Indonesia's doorstep. And finally, we land in the contemporary phase, which is where all that amazing history gets served up on a modern plate. So, what's the one thing holding all of this together? Rice. And look, this isn't just some cultural story people tell. We've got the science to back it up. Archaeologists recently found proof of rice farming on the island of Sulawesi that goes all the way back to 3000 BCE. That makes rice the absolute bedrock of life and community here. But, it wasn't all about rice. This is an archipelago, remember? So your diet totally depended on where you lived. On Java, yeah, rice was king. But if you went to the drier islands like Madura or East Nusa Tenggara, corn and cassava were your go-to staples. And way out in Maluku and West Papua, they used the sago palm to make a dish called papeda. It just shows you how diverse landscapes created these completely unique culinary beginnings. So you've got this amazing, diverse culinary foundation already in place. And that really sets the stage for the next massive chapter in this story. Because with its location right in the middle of everything, there was just no way the archipelago was going to stay isolated. It was absolutely destined to become a great crossroads of the world. So, you have ships sailing in from India, China, the Arabian Peninsula, and they aren't just carrying silks and other goods. They're bringing new ingredients, totally new cooking techniques, and even new ways of thinking. The archipelago was becoming the beating heart of a global network, connecting east and west. And of course, port cities like Tuban, Gresik, and Demak on the coast of Java, and Makassar in Sulawesi, they just exploded. They became these bustling hubs. But they weren't just for trade. They were true melting pots, where different cultures mixed, people intermarried, and, you guessed it, they shared meals, weaving this incredible tapestry of flavors. And with those traders came new beliefs. Hindu-Buddhist traditions from India really shaped how food was used in rituals and offerings. Then later on, Islamic traders arrived, and they brought not only their own culinary traditions, but also a whole new set of food rules. It fundamentally changed what people ate and why. Food was becoming way more than just fuel. It was a core part of your identity. But this golden age of cultural exchange, well, it was about to face its biggest threat yet. That intoxicating smell of Indonesian spices had traveled across the globe, and now a new kind of power was coming to find the source. And it brought with it an insatiable hunger for profit and control. Now, to really understand the conflict that was coming, you have to realize that spices weren't just something you sprinkled on your food. They were seen as a taste of heaven on earth. They were used to mummify pharaohs in Egypt and to anoint Roman emperors. They were literally worth more than gold, and controlling them meant you controlled a little piece of paradise. The Portuguese and the Spanish, they led the charge. In 1519, you had Ferdinand Magellan setting off on his famous voyage to find a direct route to Maluku, the original Spice Islands. This kicked off a crazy, fierce rivalry between these two European powers, which was finally and brutally settled by the Treaty of Saragossa. They literally carved up the world for spices. Portugal got control over Maluku, and Spain got the Philippines. So while Portugal and Spain were driven by kings and countries, a new, and honestly a much more ruthless player was about to enter the game. And this wasn't a nation, it was a corporation, the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC. The VOC set up its headquarters in Batavia, which is now Jakarta, and its rule was just devastating. To control the nutmeg trade, they systematically killed or drove away almost the entire native population of the Banda Islands. Also, they could replace them with Dutch plantations run on slave labor. And this policy of extreme violence led to horrific events like the 1740 Batavia Massacre, where thousands of ethnic Chinese residents were murdered. This wasn't trade. This was colonialism on a plate. But after centuries of exploitation, the story finally turns. After World War II and a long, hard-fought revolution, Indonesia declared its independence. And out of the fires of colonialism, a brand new national identity was forged, and that identity found its most powerful voice in its food. Yeah, in the post-colonial era, food became a language of unity. Across thousands of islands, sharing these dishes became a powerful symbol of a new, independent nation. It was like a delicious declaration that Indonesian culture was rich, it was resilient, and it was uniquely its own. And no dish tells this story better than rendang. It comes from West Sumatra, and it's so much more than just a recipe. It's a whole philosophy. That slow cooking process, where the coconut milk and all those spices infuse the meat over hours and hours, it reflects patience and community. This is a dish born from centuries of history. And this brings us to the triumphant final act of our story. In 2011, CNN held a global poll, and rendang was voted the single most delicious food in the world. It was this incredible moment of global recognition, a testament to the fact that the flavors forged in this archipelago were truly world-class. So what's the big takeaway here? Every single plate of Indonesian food is basically a history book. In every bite, you can taste it all. The original flavors of the islands, the influence of global trade, the bitterness of colonialism, and the triumphant taste of freedom. Ultimately, this is a story about how maps have shaped flavor, from those ancient trade routes that brought new ideas to the colonial treaties that carved up the islands for profit. Whoever controlled the map, well, they controlled the cuisine. It just goes to show you that understanding the world can start with understanding what's on your plate. Because in the story of Indonesia, the quest for flavor has always been a quest for power, for connection, and for identity.